Good evening. Welcome to Inside City Hall for Monday, September 8th, 2025. I'm Errol Louis. We are less than 2 months away from Election Day, and the candidates for mayor are gearing up for this final stretch of the campaign. Democratic mayoral nominee Zohran Mamdani joined me earlier today for a forum on public safety hosted by Columbia Journalism School and Vital City. Meanwhile, Cuomo attempted to paint Mamdani as the preferred candidate for Republicans. Our Ayanna Harry leads us off tonight with the latest from the campaign trail. Good evening, Ayanna.
Good evening, Errol. In the sprint to November, this was another whirlwind day. The candidates clashed over President Donald Trump and his influence in the race for mayor. So let's go ahead and start with Andrew Cuomo. After being called a snake and a liar by the mayor last week, Andrew Cuomo began his week on cable news outlets with interviews on CNBC and on CNN. In response to being called a liar and a snake, Cuomo said desperate people say desperate things. And Cuomo was clear, despite the mayor's denial last week, he believes Eric Adams may not be staying in the race for mayor until November. That's not all he had to say.
I believe he may take a job with President Trump. He's an ally of President Trump. Trump basically kept Adams out of jail. He may give him a job, he may not, and I don't think it matters because I don't think Adams is a viable candidate in this race.
And Errol, I want to show you the moment earlier today when several reporters, including our colleague Kennedy Mena, all tried to ask the mayor about, the names he called Andrew Cuomo a snake and a liar, and also whether or not there was a particular job within the Trump administrations that Adams might be willing to take on. Let's listen.
Mr. Mayor, what did you mean by calling Cuomo a snake and a liar?
We are straight ahead. All that was answered last week. We're not doing that again. We're not doing reruns. Stay focused, no distractions, and grind.
But is there any particular job?
Stay focused, no distractions, and grind. Okay, we're stopping here, folks.
There you heard it. The mayor said he is focused on the future, not the past, as of last week. And I also want to mention, during a public safety forum that was hosted by Columbia Journalism School and Vital City, hosted by Errol Louis, President Donald Trump once again entered the conversation when Zohran Mamdani was pressed about President Donald Trump and his threats to send National Guard troops to New York City. The president has repeatedly said that the troops would be sent here to help deal with violent crime. But here's how Mamdani responded.
This has nothing to do with questions of crime and safety. If it was questions of crime and safety, then you would see the deployment of the National Guard in the 8 of the 10 states that have the highest levels of crime in the country, which are Republican-led. It is not about that. It is an attempt to insert Donald Trump, his agenda, his vision into the hearts of municipalities that showcase an alternative style of politics that is actually for people, that has an affirmative vision of what's possible for them.
And one more note on Zohran Mamdani and Andrew Cuomo. Cuomo claimed on CNN that Republicans actually want Mamdani to be elected as mayor so that they can claim he is the poster child for where the Democratic Party currently stands, Errol.
Yeah, there may be some logic to that, but did Andrew Cuomo engage with reporters? I mean, it seems that they're putting a lot of really wild claims out there. But then, as we saw with the mayor, you try and ask them about it, and they start to run away.
Yeah, we put in a request to sit down and interview Andrew Cuomo today, as we do almost every day, bright and early. We did not get that opportunity. Andrew Cuomo did not do any interviews with local reporters today. Instead, he spoke on those 2 national news outlets.
Okay, thanks very much, Ayanna. Stay right there. Meanwhile, Republican mayoral nominee Curtis Sliwa launched his first television ad as he seeks to build momentum in these final weeks of the campaign. And former candidate Jim Walden is struggling to get his name removed from the ballot. Our Dan Rivley joins us now with details on those campaigns. Good evening, Dan.
Good evening, Errol. So Sliwa, the founder of the Guardian Angels, over the weekend put out a statement about this recent attack of a woman in the Union Square subway station. Sliwa says another day and another attack on women in our subways. And it was that issue, violence against women, that was the focus of his first television ad of the campaign. The campaign spot is called Women Know Better, and the messenger is his wife, Nancy. Here's a little bit from this new television ad.
Every day, women risk harassment and assault just going to school, to work, just living our lives. Curtis and I have always fought for women and will keep defending them because no one should have to choose between supporting their family and protecting their life.
Meanwhile, Sliwa did some media hits earlier today, and of course the issue of potentially taking a job in the Trump administration came up. Of course, this would enable him to drop out of the race and consolidate the vote against Zohran Mamdani, but Sliwa said thanks, but no thanks to any potential offer. Not that he has been offered one. Here's more from Sliwa on that.
The point is that nobody's reached out to me. And if they did, I would tell them respectfully, whether it was President Donald Trump or anyone else, I appreciate that you're offering me this opportunity, but I am focused on becoming the mayor to save this city because there are 3 Democrats running.
And speaking of candidates trying to get their names off the ballot, Attorney Jim Walden is trying to do just that, remove his name from the ballot after dropping his independent bid. But the New York City Board of Elections said, no, sorry. The window for that ended back in May. But Jim Walden says, disagrees. He says the ballot isn't even certified. Certification of the ballot will take place later this week, meaning there's plenty of time to remove his name from the ballot. Walden will press his case again to the City Board of Elections and even said he'll take them to court to get his name off the ballot. Errol.
Yeah, this is what Jim Walden does. He finds these little areas where government doesn't seem to be working, and he'll take people to court if necessary. This one does seem a little unusual. I don't know if I've ever encountered a case like this. He wants to get off the ballot, and they won't let him, and we're still, 2 months out.
Exactly. And look, the ballots haven't been printed, and the way Walden puts it, the way he argues it is, look, the intent of the law is to not confuse voters, is to make it much more clear. What is more confusing than a name on the ballot that he says doesn't have to be there, and that it wouldn't confuse voters to pull the lever for him, and he's not even running. Now, the Board of Elections says, look, we have the window. Walden obviously sees it differently, and I'm sure our viewers are well aware of what it actually does take to get your name off the ballot, right? You die, God forbid, you move out of the state, or you get put up as a nomination for a judgeship somewhere in the state, and that would automatically take your name off the ballot. Obviously, Walden wouldn't want to do any of those 3. He thinks, look, the intent of the law is to bring clarity to voters. I'm out of the race. The ballot hasn't been certified. Just take me off.
Yeah, and, it really is striking how between the attacks between the candidates, little technical glitches like him not being able to get off the ballot, we are talking about everything except the actual issues.
Yes.
But that's, kind of just where we are. That's what the candidates are doing.
That's where we are. And President Donald Trump has really become a lightning rod in this race. He is deeply unpopular throughout many parts of New York City. And so the fact that we have a sitting president meddling so deeply into New York City politics, that has a lot of folks riled up. And all of these candidates are now seeking to distance themselves away from Donald Trump. I think Zohran Mamdani is the only one who hasn't been accused of, cooperating with President Trump. But Eric Adams, Andrew Cuomo, they certainly have been working overtime to try and distance themselves, while also seeming like behind the scenes they could be somewhat open to some sort of help that could push forward their political futures.
Yeah, it's really striking how some of the candidates, or at least 2 of the 3, arguably the 3 who are not Mamdani, have made stopping him the whole focus of their campaign.
Well, it's interesting what Sliwa said in that soundbite we played. He says, I'm running against 3 Democrats. I think it's reasonable for him to say that, but that might not be the actual play, and it's not the way the campaign is unfolding for the voters. Because if you look at the polls, Sliwa is not getting the 30% you would expect in a typical head-to-head matchup between a Democrat and a Republican. Eric Adams is either in the high single digits or in the low teens. So it really does seem like there is an anti-Mamdani vote, because he's getting about 40% of the vote if you look at the polls. And it's not so much it's 3 Democrats and I'm the Republican, they're going to split the vote. They don't seem to be splitting the vote, or at least in a way that would allow Sliwa to win. But he's obviously thinks he can stand out if he sees the race, or make the voters see the race as 3 Democrats in a city where Democratic policies are not up to snuff.
Right. And look, it's worth pointing out, that the prospect of the next mayor being elected with considerably less than 50% of the vote in some ways doesn't bode well for the city, right? It suggests that we haven't really made up our mind yet.
It does suggest that we haven't made up our minds, but also there are so many candidates in the race that it is going to be tough for one particular candidate to get over 50%. But I will say, while, Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, and even Curtis Lee have all made their campaigns about beating Zohran Mamdani. Mamdani, for the most part, tends not to get into the weeds with them. And it seems like that message and that approach and also his focus on affordability, that's what's resonating with a lot of voters. So this anti-Mamdani coalition doesn't seem to have caught on just yet.
No, that's right. I mean, I'll tell you, talking with him today, he made a point of going after Cuomo. Not any of the other candidates, over and over and over again. Thank you, Ayanna. Thank you, Dan. We're going to continue to talk more about the candidates in the race for mayor when I'm joined by a political analyst later in tonight's show. Right now, though, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch says that she is, quote, revolted by the idea of President Trump sending National Guard troops into our city. We will tell you more about that in 2 minutes. Stay with us.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day. With in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
You want to wiggle the hips a little bit.
Keep your left arm straight.
Elbow in, head down.
Adjust your grip. Visualize the approach.
That was good. Next time we'll go out on a real course.
Next time?
It's all about connecting with the fastest wireless speeds from Spectrum. And internet customers get one mobile line included for 1 year.
I'm Sandra, this is Jorge, and we were adopted in 2019. I remember when they first came to us, Michael was already a teenager. The whole cliche of they're so lucky to have you guys, and it's the other way around. They have changed our family for the better. They chose to love us. They didn't have to. They chose us. Family.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org.
And that's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning.
You've done at the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. President Donald Trump today said he intends to send the National Guard as well as a team of immigration agents into Chicago to help, quote, straighten out that city. This comes as today the U.S. Supreme Court cleared the way for federal agents to conduct sweeping immigration operations in Los Angeles. Kevin Fry in our Washington, D.C. bureau joins me now with the latest on this. Good evening, Kevin.
Hey, good evening, Errol. Of course, this comes as Washington, D.C. has become somewhat of a guinea pig for this sort of operation, though, of course, D.C. operates kind of under a different governmental control than the rest of the country. Now, in terms of what he is doing in Chicago, over the weekend on his social media channels, he reposted, shared this meme that is, I believe, AI-generated, saying Chicago apocalypse, I can't pronounce it, and touting the fact that his Department of War could perhaps go into the city. Now, the Illinois governor and Chicago's leadership pushed back, accusing Trump of being a wannabe dictator. But of course, this comes as there is this ongoing threat and announced plans just within the last 24 hours of really amping up the ICE operations in Chicago itself. And this kind of comes as we're seeing basically a two-punch operation here. There is the National Guard threat, which is its own entity, and then also the immigration enforcement component piece, of which we've seen a fair amount here in the Washington, D.C. area as well, coinciding with the National Guard deployment. National Guard's been out collecting trash and doing other things like that. ICE has certainly been amping up. Now, as you mentioned, the head of the New York Police Department, she weighed in on this concept of the National Guard and other enforcement being unleashed in New York City. Here is some of how she reacted to that possibility.
One of the very major concerns that I have around this topic of deploying the National Guard to New York City or big cities across the country is that it will introduce an amount of chaos and disorder and confusion that will be counterproductive. To say nothing of the fact that as a lifelong New Yorker, I am revolted by the idea of the militarization of our streets.
Now, her comments there do fit in with some of the criticism we saw after Trump deployed the National Guard in Los Angeles, which was, at least by the White House's definition, trying to rein in some of the protests we saw in response to ICE raids within the city. But nonetheless, this, of course, comes into this larger conversation about federal overreach and questions about whether or not the president is operating within the rule of law. Well, we did get some assessment on one component part of this larger operation today. Supreme Court putting on hold a July ruling by a Los Angeles-based U.S. district judge, basically allowing these ICE raids to go forward there. This has been, not surprisingly, cheered on by Attorney General Pam Bondi, but at the same time has received sharp rebuke from several of the liberal justices on the Supreme Court, expressing concerns of the potential for racial profiling and unlawful search and seizure. Errol?
So now, Kevin, the Supreme Court's decision allows for operations to continue, but there's still sort of a substantive case that's going to get decided somewhere down the road, right, about whether or not these operations are proper.
Yeah, I mean, this is a standing order in the interim, and we expect this continue to be litigated. And of course, there are these other states and cities that are now navigating these possibilities. We can expect more litigation to play out there. This is shaping up to what could be, depending on what the Supreme Court brings up and elevates to a full case and hearing, could shape up to be a very big year at the Supreme Court, a referendum potentially on some of the actions that the president is taking, and whether or not he has the power to do so.
Okay, thanks very much, Kevin. Although subway crime is down and makes up only a small portion of the city's overall crime, perceptions of the subways as being unsafe is hard for some people to shake. But the NYPD says it is working on that perception, as New York One Transit reporter Samantha Liebman found out in an exclusive interview with the NYPD's chief of transit.
Riders are seeing more police on the platforms and trains, and that's by design.
78% of the crime occurs on the train or the platform. So we redeployed our officers off of turnstiles and moved them down to the platform of the train. And we saw a nice reduction right there. We went from 78% to 74% occurring on the train or the... Now, it's not where we want it to be, but that's a marked improvement.
NYPD Chief of Transit Joseph Gulata says he has changed strategies, and not only to prevent crime, but address perception.
It's not just a perception of crime. Lawlessness makes people feel unsafe in the system, and that's part of what we really started focusing on. It's when you get on a train and someone's outstretched across 3 chairs, someone sitting across them smoking, holding the gate open. We took a really good look at it, and what we saw was those people that are outstretched, those people that are committing the small crimes, are committing the big crimes too.
But it depends on who you ask whether they see a change or feel safe underground.
No, not really.
It's safe.
Definitely a sense of physical unsafety.
Does it make you feel better when you see police?
Yeah.
While perception and numbers are different, the statistics show a 2.6% reduction in major felonies year to date over last year. But it's that felony assault number that doesn't seem to move, though misdemeanor assaults are down 4.9%. Compared to pre-COVID, assaults are way up, though major crime overall is down over 9%.
It's still up, but not as much as it was up earlier in the year. But importantly, is a lot of those are assaults on our police officers as well as assault on MTA workers. We've seen that. And that comes with, you know, the enhanced platform and train patrol, more engagement.
Cameras also part of the equation. Every camera in the system is monitored here in the Transit Command Center, as well as MTA radios and other feeds. And cameras trying to prevent scenes like these, drones monitoring for subway surfing.
One of the things I changed when I got here is we fly every day during the week, during the school day. We want to try to talk to the parents, do everything we possibly can.
The other challenge, says Chief Gulata, is the justice system and judges not imposing bail for recidivists who are responsible for a large portion of subway crime. He says they are working with the MTA and DAs to convince the courts to do more. Samantha Liepman, New York 1.
It is time for a break. Coming up, we'll bring you a closer look at a new art exhibit at City Hall to commemorate 24 years since the September 11th attacks. Stay with us. This election year is all about New York City. There are 51 council seats up for grabs, races for our next city comptroller and the next public advocate.
Plus, an unprecedented race for mayor. That puts the power in your hands to decide who will run our city.
Our team of political experts will be covering every angle of this election to keep you informed on how it could affect you, so you can feel confident with your decision at the polls.
Stay with Spectrum News New York 1 for Decision 2025, exclusively on Spectrum.
Okay, why Lucas should have a phone. 1, you can always get in touch with me. 2, think of all the new photos I can send you.
Get to the money.
Plus, with Spectrum Internet, we get 1 unlimited mobile line included for a year. I even used the Spectrum Savings Calculator. And you know what it said? Savings.
That was actually pretty good.
He's impressive.
Internet customers get 1 mobile line included for 1 year. From Spectrum.
Mom was always organized, but she started forgetting to pay her bills on time. And she'd buy the same gifts over and over.
Telling the girls about my Alzheimer's diagnosis was really hard.
At first, we had our cries, but then we were like, okay, let's make a plan. Early detection gave us time to adapt together.
It's so important for you to think about what you can do and making the most of what you have.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together.
From my time growing up in Queens watching New York 1 to my time reporting here, I've seen how quickly a story can change. At News All Day, we bring you the news as it's happening, from around the boroughs to local government to your neighborhood. Because our city never stops moving.
3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Shannon Ferry with the day's developing stories. But first,
stay up to date and informed with News All Day, weekdays from noon to 4.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall. City Hall will mark the 24th anniversary of 9/11 with an art exhibit organized by a former police officer who lost most of his sight because of the terror attacks, and his wife, who's a photographer. Their nonprofit group is showcasing artwork from all around the world, urging New Yorkers to never forget what happened on that terrible day that tore apart our city and the world. State House reporter Bernadette Hogan joins me now with more on that. Good evening, Bernadette.
Good evening, Errol. And starting tonight, for the next 2 months, this is the first time that this nonprofit Ground Zero 360 will be bringing its exhibition to New York City. And I spoke with the organizers who said that it's very important, especially this year for the 24th anniversary and also ahead of next year's 25th anniversary.
There was missing posters
Yes.
went up everywhere in the city, in the subways, the hospitals, the trains, to everywhere.
24 years ago, Paul McCormick was an NYPD officer, responding to the terror attacks in Lower Manhattan after 2 planes were hijacked and flown into the Twin Towers, taking the lives of nearly 3,000 people.
The largest mobilization in the history of the NYPD was called. We went into our precincts, and it was chaos. It took us a while to come to grips.
McCormick lost most of his sight, he says, because of chemicals at the cleanup site. But his memories stay with him, clear as that fateful day.
There's a lot of people, that first responders there, that are dying of cancers. respiratory diseases. Every week or two you hear of somebody else, some firefighter that was there that passed. It's horrible.
That's why McCormick and his wife, Nicola McLean, a photographer also on the scene in 2001, created Ground Zero 360, a nonprofit group dedicated to remembering the victims, their families, and the survivors through art.
We're trying to, bring attention to what happened, because as they say, if you forget the past, you're deemed to repeat it in the future. So we're trying to, keep the memory alive and never forget the sacrifice of so many on that terrible day.
Over 60 artists from around the world created pieces on what 9/11 meant to them for the 10-year anniversary in 2011. While they've been shown across the world, they're coming to New York City for the first time. Starting Monday, over 30 works from a collection of more than 120 pieces, including photographs, drawings, paintings, and mixed media, will be on display at City Hall for the next 2 months.
I remember when the first tower fell, on my police radio, a female's voice came over the air calling for help, a female police officer. There's something different when a female calls for help, and there's something really sickening in your gut when there's absolutely nothing you can do to help them. And we later found out that female voice was police officer Moira Smith.
38-year-old Moira Smith was the first NYPD officer to report a plane crash into the North Tower. Her portrait is featured inside the rotunda.
Everyone talks about her smile. You just can't help but smile thinking about her. And the world's not as fun place anymore since she's been gone.
She was also the only female police officer killed on that day. Her husband, Jimmy Smith, is a retired member of the NYPD.
I love this painting that Jim Fitzpatrick did. Captures, that's her photo from her ID when she came on the job, her rookie photo. So you're not supposed to smile, but she couldn't help it.
QR codes provide onlookers with explanations from the artists themselves. Pieces like 23 by artist Googie honors the 23 NYPD officers killed on that day. Huey O'Donoghue painted the numbers 343 on a book to remember the number of firefighters killed. One photo by Nicola McLean depicts 2 empty shoes outside the Wall Street subway station. And McCormick says that he's hoping to bring this exhibition back to City Hall next year, Errol.
And McCormick himself has quite an interesting story, right? I mean, this is somebody who, we said he lost his sight. You couldn't tell from that clip, but he really has.
Yeah, you couldn't tell. He told me he can see out of the side, but when he was looking right at me for the interview, it was blurry. So, I mean, you can't tell, but he said that's one of the reasons why it's so important that, going forward, they're doing exhibitions at schools. They want younger children to hear about this, and that's why they're keeping up with this collection.
Okay, thanks very much, Bernadette. We are going to take a break here, and when we come back, we'll take a look at each mayoral candidate's path to victory when I speak with a political analyst. Michael Lang is here next. Stay with us.
My time at New York One has shown me that in the city that never sleeps, the news never stops. So as the day winds down, turn to the rush hour.
Good afternoon, I'm Monica Bergman.
To catch up on the stories that matter across the 5 boroughs, with in-depth interviews from the city's newsmakers, plus the latest forecast. Catching you up with today, preparing you for tomorrow. Right here on the Rush Hour. Weekdays from 4 to 7 p.m.
Watch this. I can make it hotter, I can make it colder. Hotter, colder from my phone. Smart birdhouse. Even the birds have Spectrum Wi-Fi. Who likes treats? You do. That's right, yes you do. Very impressive, son. And one more. Nice.
Can I change colors?
Launch party mode. Yeah.
It's all about connecting with the fastest, most reliable internet from Spectrum.
I'm Chris Jakimick. I served in the United States Air Force, and I deployed 3 times. So in 2017, I was serving as an Air Force First Sergeant. Our motto in that role is, my job is people, everyone is my business. But unfortunately in that year, I would lose my own brother, Lance Corporal Adam Jakimick, to suicide. The majority of veteran suicides are from guns. I store my weapons securely, not only for myself, but for my family. My service never stops.
At Spectrum Noticias, we recognize that our New York City community is vibrant and diverse.
Spectrum Noticias delivers balanced coverage of the stories that matter in our communities and across the country.
Our journalists are based in the neighborhoods we cover, ensuring you get in-depth reporting on what's happening in the places we call home.
So join us at Spectrum Noticias. We're always on, always there for you.
Now available on your TV. Check your local listings. Also available on the Spectrum News app.
We are back inside City Hall, turning back to the race for mayor. With less than 2 months to go until Election Day, candidates are preparing for the final weeks on the campaign trail, and the attacks are ramping up as well. This all comes as Mayor Adams last Friday attempted to shut down rumors that he will be ending his re-election campaign and taking a job with the Trump administration. Andrew Cuomo got involved today, saying that Adams is not a viable candidate and would be in jail if it were not for the president's interference. Joining me now to talk about that and much more is Michael Lang. He's a political analyst and researcher who's been breaking down the mayoral race on his Substack, which is called The Narrative Wars. You can also find him in New York Magazine, the New York Times, and elsewhere. Welcome back to the program. Good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me.
I want to review some of the most telling dynamics of the primary. You were very good on the analysis of this, and then I want to sort of push forward and see if those same dynamics are going to play out when it comes to the general election. So let's take a look at the map of who won what. On this particular map, the blue is Mamdani and the red is Cuomo. And you can sort of see there's some broad geographic strokes there. You can see where they cluster. But really, you've done more analysis suggesting that, or pointing out that the Mamdani campaign was won by focusing on young Democrats, South Asian voters, Muslim voters, Democrats in areas with a lot of renters. Mm-hmm. Is that coalition big enough to carry a general election?
Absolutely. And this is something that we've seen the last couple of years, is that typically people think of like independent voters, for instance, as being more moderate or more conservative. But during the Biden administration, many independents were just increasingly young people who kind of felt alienated by both parties. And I think as Mamdani proved in the primary, that kind of demographic is really amenable to his more anti-establishment, generational change message.
Mm-hmm. And when we talk about young voters and how he's brought young voters in, he's bringing in a cohort. It's not that they're coming in because they're young. They just happen to be young, and they will probably keep the same politics and the same affiliations for the rest of their lives.
Exactly. It's, you know, many progressive candidates have said, I'm going to change the electorate. That's how I'm going to win. He actually delivered on that. And in the map that you showed, his strongest support was really kind of from Western Queens through North Brooklyn. And I mean, these are neighborhoods that are the youngest in the whole city, where, you know, more than 3/4 of the folks who live there rent. So these are young people, college educated, kind of politicized in this Obama, Trump, Sanders era, relatively left leaning, but he was really able to kind of galvanize their support in numbers that we not only haven't seen in New York City, we haven't really seen across the country.
So as best you can tell, did he find them or did they find him? Meaning, did he craft his message to this cohort, or did they sort of naturally gravitate to him because he was saying, let's freeze the rents?
I think he crafted a message that had pretty broad appeal. I mean, you know, as shown by the map, he did very well in other parts of the city that are not very young or are not very college educated, right? But I think he was able to disseminate that message, particularly over social media and these very relatable, funny, interesting videos, in a way that made it very easy for younger voters to find him.
Now, Andrew Cuomo did best in the primary, at least, with middle-class black voters, wealthy Manhattanites, Orthodox and Hasidic Jews. But you detected an enthusiasm gap, meaning, yeah, they came out for him, they just didn't come out for him in the kind of numbers he needed to win the primary. Is anything going to change in the general election?
You know, I think to the extent for each of those kind of cohorts that you mentioned, some of them, like Orthodox and Hasidic Jews and also kind of older white ethnic voters, there are many of them who are independents and Republicans, and those numbers probably will boost a little bit, but Mamdani will also get a huge boost kind of as the Democratic nominee, right? There will be certainly a non-negligible amount of people who maybe voted for Cuomo in the primary or didn't vote in the primary who then go and vote for the Democratic nominee. And I think the one thing, age really kind of stratified the two coalitions. And in the general election, Cuomo's coalition will be ironically even older than it was in the primary in terms of the Republican and some of the more moderate independents in the electorate. They're very old. And I think it's kind of a new New York versus kind of that old New York. And old New York kind of shrunk, and Cuomo found that out the hard way.
Well, you threw out something that, because I was raised analyzing the old New York, where ethnic coalition, ethnic politics, tribal politics, if you want to call it that, really determined everything. And you pointed out that Staten Island is the most heavily Italian county in the whole United States, 55% Italian. And yes, Cuomo won it, but he won it relatively narrowly over Mamdani in the primary.
Right. I think some of this also has to do with probably some of those older Italian voters leaving the Democratic coalition, but it's also Staten Island's one of the most union-dense counties in the country. And I think Mamdani doing really well there, where there is not, some crop of young college-educated voters there necessarily. It showed that his message of affordability had quite broad appeal to the point where it was underestimated.
It's interesting. One of the things I've noticed as I was talking with Mamdani earlier today in a forum is that while he would, if he's elected, become the youngest mayor in like 100 years in New York, he's actually sort of trying to bring a sort of a message asking people to act like grown-ups, to sort of change the conversation and talk about it entirely differently. Is that true for his supporters as well, do you think?
I certainly think so. I think there's a lot of people who have government and bureaucratic experience of all ages who seem very interested in the idea of working in a Mamdani administration. For Zoran is a member of the Democratic Socialists of America, but he's not, like, you can't really pigeonhole him as like an ideologue. He's in many ways like a left technocrat who's very committed to, making sure that I guess maybe, that practicality is enforced. And I think, I would say he surprised a lot of people in the primary. I think his administration might surprise people in terms of actually some of the, the things that they look to prioritize.
Okay, let's look forward to New York 12. Jerry Nadler is retiring. You happen to live in the district on the west side.
I do.
West side versus east side. There's going to be a long, long line of candidates waiting outside our studio probably who all want to run for that seat. How are you assessing it? What's shaping up as far as you can tell?
So I think what's very interesting is that, New York 12 is home to all these really, prominent financial, cultural, and media institutions, right? You have Billionaires Row, Museum Mile, the New York Times headquarters. Regrettably, the New York One studio is one block outside. But what's interesting is that you're not going to, you likely might not get some, super well-known media figure, some billionaire that wins the seat. It might just be a kind of a battle of the political power of Manhattan's Upper West Side versus the Upper East Side, right? And you kind of see someone like Michael Lasher, who Jerry Nadler said very kind things about in that New York Times article announcing that he was going to retire, emerge as maybe that West Side standard bearer. And you have the East Side, which for many years was represented by Carolyn Maloney until she was defeated by Nadler. You kind of see that next generation of leaders there, like a Julie Menon or an Alex Boras, kind of emerging, but the thing with the East Side, it's more ancestrally Republican. There are more independents. It doesn't quite pack the Democratic punch that the West Side is, and the West Side is a little more politically cohesive.
There's a lot of young talent that's gravitating towards this race. What do you think will be the big issues in the race?
I think, well, just to start with kind of what's happening in Washington, right? Donald Trump, he's running roughshod over every institution that certainly many liberal Democrats hold very close. I think, number one, it's just going to be taking on Trump in Washington. But then also, as we saw with the mayoral primary, this is the wealthiest district in all of the United States. It's one of the districts with the highest Jewish populations, right? So Israel-Palestine will certainly be an issue that is litigated very intensely. You also saw in that Nadler interview, he had very harsh words for the Israeli government. He signaled a willingness to cut off offensive weapons or work to cut them off when he returns to Washington. So that'll definitely be on the agenda. And then also kind of that issue of corporate power, money in politics, things like that in such a district that is very wealthy, but is relatively liberal. It'll be interesting to kind of see how those two issues kind of clash.
They'll talk about getting money out of politics and spend probably, tens of millions of dollars to get the point across.
One of the most expensive races we'll see, probably.
Undoubtedly. Thanks very much for coming by. Great talking with you, Mike.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, let's take a break now. When we come back, we'll turn back to the race for mayor with two top consultants. Stay with us.
If it's the theater you love, then we've got just the ticket. On Stage is your all-access pass to Broadway, off-Broadway, and the best live entertainment in the city. The interviews and backstage exclusives. All that's made On Stage the go-to source for entertainment for over 20 years. Join us every Saturday and Sunday at 7:30 p.m. for On Stage. Also available on the Spectrum News app. I'll see you at the theater, exclusively on Spectrum.
Your entertainment the way you want it. With Spectrum TV, all these streaming apps are included at no extra cost. So you can watch anything. Movies, series, sports, reality, news.
Here's a look at today's top stories.
Exclusive originals.
We await your orders.
And even more of your favorites with live TV. Stream across your devices and enjoy anywhere.
See you later.
Get it all with Spectrum TV.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. 2 milligrams of fentanyl can be lethal. A lethal dose is in here. Who gets it, I won't know.
It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
The sad reality is fentanyl is being mixed into everything now.
More kitchen now.
My father was a New York City firefighter. My mission, like his, is to serve New Yorkers in a city that doesn't stop when the sun goes down. Being with New York One since the beginning, I'm now honored to join you even earlier each weeknight. Starting at 8 with New York Tonight, we'll explore the latest news developments, followed by New York One at 10 to wrap up your day. So join me each weeknight starting at 8 right here on New York One.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where we are keeping our focus on Election Day, which is less than 2 months away. Joining me now to talk about that are the members of this week's Consultants Corner. We have Democratic consultant Tess McRae and political consultant Andrew Kurtzman. Thank you both for being here. And Tess, let me start with you. I spoke this morning with Zohran Mamdani, who cleared up a lot of policy proposals. We were talking about public safety, and he went into considerably more depth. That you kind of get beyond the talking points and answering back and forth with his opponents to talk about how we would create a Department of Community Safety and do some other things, what the funding levels would be and so forth. Is the city ready for a more nuanced conversation about public safety? I mean, a lot of the stuff gets thrown overboard in the heat of a campaign. He made a conscious decision today to try not to do that, but to really sort of talk policy.
Yeah, I think that's important. I think what we're seeing is an important transition for Zohran from a primary mayoral run to a general mayoral run. He has 3 of his opponents kind of taking shots at one another as to why they're the one to beat Mamdani, and meanwhile he's stepping up and saying, these are the things I'm going to do on day 1, month 2, to address your needs. And he knows that a lot of the general electorate is looking for a real answer on what's going on in terms of policing, and saying defund the police or something like that is not going to be answer enough. He said in the primary that he's beyond that, he's evolved from that, and I think now he's showing how he's evolved from that.
Let me give you an example of what I was talking about. I asked him about whether he would maintain the NYPD gang database. The city council has raised some questions about it. They've held some hearings. They've actually introduced legislation to basically do away with it. I asked him about that. Here's what he had to say.
I have supported that proposal. It's one I've supported because of the vast dragnet has meant the inclusion of New Yorkers. There's no question that we have to take gangs extremely seriously. And yet I find that a database that includes New Yorkers on such bases is one that doesn't actually do exactly that.
I found it interesting. I mean, he's sort of thoughtful and, ironically, while he's the youngest candidate by far in the race, he seems to be asking people to have kind of a grown-up conversation about these issues.
Right. Well, I mean, he's a thoughtful person. I think you could see that. Public safety is such a visceral issue for New Yorkers. I mean, I've always felt that kind of the threshold question for any mayoral candidate is, can he keep the city under control? Can he keep me safe in the New York City subway system? And for Mamdani particularly, he's such a blank slate. The whole story of this campaign is about the effort to define Mamdani, right? Is he too left-wing? Will he keep us safe, right? Is he pro-cop or anti-cop? And, the race is all about defining him, him defining himself positively. But, I mean, you see, Cuomo is just after him, and Adams is after him, on a daily basis, trying to fill in the blanks. Is that a
mistake? I mean, in conventional terms, I mean, you guys are the experts, but right. I always thought you're supposed to talk about yourself. You're supposed to, try and define your opponent and, say something nasty about it, but you've got to motivate your base. You got to get them out.
Well, we're running out of time. Cuomo's had a long time, in the primary, now the general, to do that. And I think we saw that he didn't do such a great job in projecting himself as a person of the future, or a person with great ideas. I'm not so sure at this point, with whatever it is, 6 weeks to go, that it's anything except defining Mamdani. And, it's still up for grabs.
I don't know if that's the approach I would take. I think if you're talking about a 1 versus 1 race, then sure. Talking about the reasons why you're going to be better than Mamdani makes sense. But right now, we have 3 opponents, 1 on the Republican line and 2 running on the third-party line, who are all effectively pulling from the same base of voters right now. What you need to be doing, and what these third-party voters in particular, I mean, I'm sure Slee wouldn't mind it either, is to appeal to some of the voters for Mamdani, some of the Democrats, as to why you're the person to show up. And if you can do that without always saying Zohran's name, I think it's even better.
Yeah, when I talk to Slee, he's doing exactly that. He says his entire campaign staff is all millennials and Gen X, and they're going right at younger voters who are fed up. Right. They've sort of identified that as a target-rich environment where they can maybe get somebody's attention.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think what we're seeing and have seen for some time, though maybe it's the clearest that it's been this year, is these hits that maybe worked 10, 15 years ago. Socialist, too progressive, too new, no experience. That's not resonating with voters. Voters want somebody who's going to actually speak to what they're going to do. And, for better or worse, Zohran is doing that. He's not speaking in rhetoric. He's not using the same communication mediums that maybe other campaigns have been using, and voters are responding to that.
Yeah, it's funny that even when President Trump says, oh, he's a communist, I keep thinking, if you weren't here for the last part of the Cold War, you don't necessarily even know what that means to call somebody a communist, right?
No, that's right.
I mean, there was a time when they had, armies on the march doing stuff that would affect Americans, but that's, in some ways, that's in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating question, right? And the dynamics of Mamdani's kind of appeal are so extraordinary, and they're new, right? He's kind of telling the public, he's telling, America in one sense, that the old ideological rules don't apply, that affordability is now something that means something to the middle, right? To the right wing to some extent, to the left. He's redefining the conversation. It's really refreshing, and it's very, very dangerous to people like Andrew Cuomo and Eric Adams.
Sure. It means not just that you have are risking losing the game, but like the game has changed, right? And then it's very hard to win a game if you weren't ready for it. It is time for a break. I've got more to talk about with these consultants. We'll do that in 2 minutes. Stay with us. Here's the deal. People need a place to explore national issues that have an impact on their community. To understand those issues better, we're bringing together our team of local political journalists from across the country to break down what's happening, So join us every week to catch up on the key stories making a big difference across the nation and in your local community.
Watch The Big Deal with Errol Louis Friday nights at 9 on Spectrum News New York 1. Available on all of your favorite devices exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Floor's Fire Design House. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. Spectrum helps me stay online. You know, I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. Without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
Get up to 4 months free when you bundle award-winning internet. Visit spectrum.com/business to learn more.
Every day tells a new story. At Mornings on One, we're dedicated to bringing you the stories that matter most to start your day with in-depth coverage of the day's developing news.
I'm Pat Kernan. Here are the stories we're following this morning.
And weather updates every 10 minutes.
Some morning sunshine possible, clouds take over.
It's our responsibility to get you the information you need before you head out the door. Mornings on One, weekdays starting at 6 on the Spectrum News app. Free for Spectrum customers.
They tell us New York is safe, but women know better. Rapes are up 40%. Felony assaults are at an all-time high.
Welcome back to Inside City Hall, where I'm once again joined by my Consultants Corner, Democratic consultant Tess McRae, political consultant Andrew Kirschman. What we just saw was the first television ad by Curtis Sliwa. That was his wife, who was kind of talking about safety concerns and so forth, sort of a softer touch than the Guardian Angels approach, shall we say.
Right. Well, Curtis Sliwa is not going to win this race, right? So I think that this is more about Curtis Sliwa, right? He's traditionally been kind of sometimes say
he got 28% 4 years ago.
I try not to make predictions on TV, and I'm going to stick to this one.
Okay.
I mean, he's always kind of been considered kind of comic relief, right? And I think he's actually run a good campaign this year, and I think probably maybe he'll try to refine himself as someone to take more seriously.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, this is speaking to a demographic that Republicans or conservatively, and I think Curtis Sliwa has been a libertarian for a long time, have been winning over, which is kind of like white women, bringing them into the Republican Party in disguise of fear of safety. So, I mean, it's effective messaging for sure. Not messaging I align with personally, but effective nonetheless. So I agree. I think that Curtis knows that he's probably out of this race. He's not winning.
Well, are you guys saying that he's confined to voters who just can't pull the lever for a Democrat? Because he overlaps with the other candidates on a lot of different issues.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, Democrats who are going into the voting booth are going to vote for a Democrat or not going to vote for a Republican. I don't think that the calculus is, well, Zoran is too left, so let me give the moderate Republican a try. I think that like those days are kind of past us. We're not where we were when Bloomberg, an independent, could win. So yeah, I don't see it happening.
Interesting. Let's talk about.
Sorry, I'm just saying if you're worried about public safety, I think at this point you're voting for Andrew Cuomo or Eric Adams, and Eric Adams is is not in great shape himself.
Meanwhile, those two are tearing each other apart. Here's a little sample of what's been going on between Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo.
Andrew Cuomo is a snake and a liar. Desperate people say desperate things. I believe he may take a job with President Trump. He's an ally of President Trump. Trump basically kept Adams out of jail.
Yeah, those two are not going to cooperate on anything. Nobody's dropping out for anybody else.
Yeah, no one's gonna drop out unless Trump, offers him Adams a terrific job. And look, the longer this circus plays out, the worse it is for Andrew Cuomo, right? If it had been done cleanly, right? Eric Adams, exits the race, gets a great job. It would have been, kind of simpler. And now Donald Trump is just playing these guys, for fun. And, Cuomo looks more and more kind of hostage to this situation, hostage to this storyline that Donald Trump is behind his, is rooting for him to win. That is not going to gain Andrew Cuomo any fans among New York Democrats. And
they're so good at attacking each other that the attack becomes the headline and the great video, as opposed to why they're attacking each other or what the whole race is about. So like the voters are on the sideline, the issues are on the sideline. Even their common foe, Mamdani, is on the sideline.
Yeah,
they're just going at it.
He's talking to them on the sideline. He's talking to the voters on the sideline.
I mean, to have Andrew Cuomo attacking Eric Adams and vice versa is like so wrong for the moment. It's Mamdani. It's like I said, it's the race to define Mamdani, period. And to have the other guys going after each other, it's bad politics.
Something I keep an eye on, just because I've been covering black politics for a long, long time. Are black voters up for grabs here? I mean, there are a number of black officials who were all with Adams 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Literally none of them are with him now.
Yes.
And now, that's the leadership. Does that apply to the voters, too?
I think so. I think voters are kind of sick of what Adams is bringing to the table, or maybe lack thereof, as of late. I think that by and large, this idea that Zoran only appeals to like white, rich voters didn't really pan out in the primary. I don't think it's going to pan out, in the general, in noted areas, Harlem, Southeast Queens, traditional areas that would, go for an Eric Adams type did go with Zoran. I think Andrew Cuomo was expecting those voters to go with him, and they didn't. So I think that by and large, you're going to see black voters break for Zoran. Maybe a few in Brooklyn will stay with Eric Adams, but I do think they're going to vote for Zoran.
Yeah. I mean, Mamdani won Bed-Stuy by 43 points.
Yeah.
Over Cuomo, and you could say, well, it's gentrifying. It's like, it ain't that gentrifying.
It's not that gentrifying.
Right. And he won Harlem, I think, by 18
yeah,
points. Those are big numbers.
Yeah.
That's meaningful support on the ground. We'll see how all of that plays out. Thanks so much for coming by. Great talking with the both of you. That is going to do it for tonight's show. Be sure to join us tomorrow when my guests will include City Council members Sandy Nurse and Jennifer Gutierrez. Until then, thanks for watching and have a great evening. We'll see you next time inside City Hall.
That's a look at some of what's in the papers this morning. You've done with the sports section.
Today's story is about the latest chapter for a beloved local business.
It's a beautiful day with temperatures in the 60s, but showers are expected in the next hour.
In a city that's always on the go, it's important to stop to hear the stories that connect us.
The news that matters to New Yorkers. That's what brings us together. That's Mornings on One.
Weekdays starting at 6.
Exclusively on Spectrum.
My name is Gail, and we are in my showroom for Florist Fire Design House. We are a full production wedding and event company that focuses on florals. Getting Spectrum set up for my business was extremely smooth. They were here the same day, had it set up within an hour, and I was online and ready to go and run my business. I have to be able to be online at 5 a.m. when the market's open. And if I'm contacting a merchant via email or placing an order online, without Spectrum, it wouldn't be possible.
One more road.
Spectrum is reliable, they're committed, they're fast, and they really take care of me as a business owner. Last year, when the really bad hurricane came through, our internet stayed the entire time. One of the businesses down the street, she was like, wait a minute, how are you still online? And I was like, Spectrum, baby.